you don't have someone to help you. Like, you have to be able to do it yourself, whether that's lifting a railroad tie or a fence post or moving machinery. You kind of just have to do it and figure out a way to get it done. I really enjoyed bags on, tool in hand, building something. I thought that was super rewarding, as a career path. That's one of the very few things where you go to work that day, when you stand back at the end of the day, you can literally see your progress of what you've built. I think you have to determine what you're committed to. I think that's what it really comes down to, is like figuring out what you want. And then if that's what you want, then go for that.
Expert advice, practical tips, real life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Martin, we were just talking about the Elon Musk SpaceX rocket catch. Did you ever think that would happen in your lifetime?
I got to tell you, my grandfather, it's getting a little old, but anyway, my grandfather grew up in Nebraska at a time there were
1776?
Yeah, it was after that. No, there were 3 ruts in the road, 2 for the wagon wheel and 1 for the horse. I'm serious.
Wow.
And he saw a man walk on the moon. Right?
That's pretty wild.
Now, the only difference between, rocket launches in 69 and what we saw yesterday or day before, whatever it was, is really that we're immune to it now. We're kind of like, it takes such a quantum leap to amaze us. And that was a quantum leap that amazed us.
Yeah.
And if we didn't say, we're talking about caption booster, Elon Musk. Just amazing. I wasted a lot of time yesterday. I watched it over and over. And if I found a new view from some guy standing on the beach with his iPhone, I watched that one too. It just
Well, it's just crazy that it happened the first time.
Yeah.
That's what's nuts. Like no trial and error, just let's do it.
There's something else to it too. If you listen to that with the audio on, you heard people, mostly guys, screaming. And what the F and no effing way. And absolutely that wildly enthusiastic about essentially an engineering problem, right?
Yeah.
That we're still get that emotional about it. And it gives me great heart because it's not about I won't even talk about political issues, but empty-minded, nothing, touchy-feely bullcrap. But we got a lot of people who are still really, really, really enthused about stuff like catching a booster. And that gives me great hope. I love it. I love it.
Really interesting. I saw something about Elon Musk and SpaceX, how they pay something like 40% of what they pay people at NASA and these other like Blue Origin, these space companies. But they give them equity, like a good amount of equity. Yeah. And everyone wants to go to SpaceX. Like they're turning people away.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Well, if you're an engineer.
Speaking of, 3 ruts in the road, our guest today is from Montana. And I think that a lot of listeners may think that there's 3 ruts in the road still in Montana. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cleo.
Hey, Alex.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Can you dispel any myths for us about the 3 ruts like Martin mentioned?
Definitely no ruts anymore. I'm sure you could find them out in the hills, but not as common anymore.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's perception of Montana is very much based on Yellowstone these days. How accurate is it?
Everyone I always interact with says, I've been to Bozeman, or I know of Bozeman, which is very common, very, very common. It's a popular place. It's growing like crazy. It's a great spot to be. And where I grew up is 6.5 hours away from there. So
yeah, you're almost in Canada, aren't you?
Yep.
Pretty close. Yeah.
50 miles from Canada.
So is it 6.5 hours as the crow flies, or is that because the roads are so bad it takes forever to get there?
Ouch, no, it's just
I love Montana. Montana is cool.
Yep. Long drive.
Well, no, you're in Colorado. You know what it's like. If you wanted to go to the other, it's not the roads are bad. The roads have to go around a lot of obstacles to get
torturous path.
Yeah, and I'd say it's not. I mean, it's not a straight shot by any means, but once you get on the east side of Montana, the ability to go straight is a lot easier. So navigating around things isn't as challenging. So it's a little flat.
Pretty flat.
Yeah. It's not
Gotcha.
Kansas or Oklahoma
Okay.
by any means, but it's definitely not Western Montana or Colorado.
Yeah. And how long have you been in Colorado now?
We've been down in Colorado for, going on 6 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Well, a great place to live. Got a lot of friends out there, and it's always a pleasure to go and visit. So this is going to be a fun conversation today. We're going to kind of walk through your journey as a contractor and your evolution as a business owner. And I think we'll talk about your family background in Montana a little bit, but I'm really excited to kind of dig into the experience of being a W-2 employee while also being a contractor and running your own jobs, and then finally making that leap into, hey, I'm going all in on myself. And then all the lessons you've learned while being there. Let's just start at the beginning, though. We've mentioned you're from Montana. Tell us about your family. Tell us about your upbringing and why, your family life has made you who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great place to start. I consider my upbringing to be kind of the classic, American childhood. When you think of like white picket fence, family all around, like I really had a very blessed childhood. Both sides of my family grew up very close, and nearly all of my extended family are owner operators. Farming and ranching, John Deere dealership, lumberyard, carpentry, custom homes, pretty much both sides of my family, electricians. The list kind of keeps going. We HVAC technicians, there's a slew of them. And so that's kind of been instilled in me from a very early age.
And now I've got a question. Is that because Montana is such a smaller population that you got to work for yourself, or is that and there's just not a lot of W-2, so you got to make your own living, or is that because it's a gene thing for your family?
Oh, I'd say it's probably a little bit of both. But you
Okay.
definitely have, especially on kind of the agricultural side, you have that kind of traditional, generational, handed down sort of path, if you will, I guess. So that's how a lot of that comes to be. But on the flip side, with the electricians and sort of the trades side of my family, that definitely is more of a pursuit of ownership, I guess, owner operators. There are other opportunities to work for other people and do things like that, but they both play a factor, especially in small town, rural Montana.
Yeah. I know that success is definitely a moving target, but I would say by all stretches, you have become successful. And we've had 2 recent guests. It was, remind me the names. Who was our HVAC guy, Martin? Refrigeration.
Oh, Mike Kelly.
Mike Kelly.
And then Victor.
And
I think you're
no,
thinking
not
of Victor. Oh,
I'm not thinking of Victor. I'm thinking of Doug Waterwells and ran for state senator in
sure.
Oklahoma.
Uh,
But they're both from agriculture, so it's just an interesting thing to see
Robert
kind of how
Keyes. Robert Keyes. Yeah.
Really interesting to see how that background kind of influences the desire to go out on your own and the skill set to even be able to do that. Okay, so you have that gene in your background and your family. It's kind of the culture of your surroundings growing up. What was that like for you? Were you jumping into all of these different businesses and shadowing them, or what was that like for you growing up?
Yeah, and to touch on your recent podcast guests you guys mentioned, and I listened to both of those. I think the comparison or the theme that comes from that is simply one word or 2 words: hard work. Right? In a rural atmosphere, you don't have someone to help you. Like you have to be able to do it yourself, whether that's, lifting a railroad tie or a fence post or, moving machinery, something like that. Like you kind of just have to do it and figure out a way to get it done. So you have to be a little bit creative. You have to be thoughtful. You have to be careful, because there's not really always that backup person to help, or even like a cell phone to call for help. Like sometimes you just don't have it. So I think that's where it comes from. I remember, and our minds sometimes play tricks on us, but what I recall when I was younger, I think I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, and I was out fencing with my uncle, and I'm working the post pounder, and we're going along, and it's happened to many people, and I've heard the story, and the post pounder goes up and you kind of lose grip and your hands come underneath, and then that pounder comes down on your hands. And I ended up breaking my thumb, and he kind of just looks at me and he says, shake it off, take a quick walk. And then I took 5 minutes and I come back and collect myself. He's like, all right, you ready to go again? We go for a little bit longer, and then pretty soon it's just like swolled up in my glove, and I'm like, I can't really hold on to anything anymore. And then we call it quits. But it's like, that is the kind of mentality that I grew up around. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that's just kind of how I learned to deal with things. So,
Man, it reminds me of my father-in-law owns a ranch out in Texas, and my wife had a huge horse accident when she was 8 years old, and there was basically a cattle guard that was overgrown and couldn't see, and the horse stepped into it, broke its leg, and wife flew.
Ooh.
First thing that happened though is he picked up my wife and said, okay, we're going to get back on a horse. And he put her on his horse, and she went for a ride again.
Yeah.
And it's that mentality of, hey, we're going to keep going. It's another thing you said, that hard work and that struggle and the stress of just grinding and finding a way really helps you grow. There's a lot of research being done in human longevity and how to, live longer. And there's a lot of scientists. There's one from Harvard that has recently been on several podcasts like Joe Rogan. And he talks about the best thing you can do for your body is put it through stress. It's by fasting, by going through rigorous workouts, by exposing yourself to extreme heat, to extreme cold, because it turns on this signal in the body of like, we're not going to make it. So we've got to really try hard and go against this aging so that we can make it. And so it turns on those receptors and those signals in your body, and it allows you to live longer. And this guy is like 60 years old, and he looks like he's like 35. He looks my age, and it's crazy. And so I think in the same sense, the stress that you went through as, going through that hard work, dealing with a broken thumb and still trying to push through, it triggers this, survival instinct of I've got to make it. And I love that. As a father now, I think about how I can set my kids up for success, and it's giving them experiences like you had, as difficult as that is. So love to hear that. When did you get a sense that you were really going to, stick in construction? It sounds like you had a lot of different options there, from staying in agriculture to, being out on a ranch in Montana. What really got you into construction specifically?
yeah, when we were, well, let's see, I was probably in middle school, and when my family parted ways with our John Deere dealership. And so my father had sold that to kind of a different owner group in the area. And if that hadn't happened, I probably would have ended up going into that field, or, some sort of ag related thing in general. But once that happened, then I kind of switched gears, and I was like, okay, well, if that's not sort of the nearest available option, what is? And then I started working for my uncle, building custom homes. And I was probably a junior. It was probably like my sophomore summer in high school. So we'll call it 16. That's when that's kind of when I figured it out. And I was pretty good at it. It wasn't difficult. It was very natural. So it just seemed like a really good fit.
And at that point, you're totally exposed to the actual operations construction side, business side, money side, paying for parts, selling houses. You have any involvement in that, or was it being a carpenter or a framer? Or
definitely field? Yep. Being around it, I at a family table or whatever, I heard more of those things, but I wasn't directly involved at that age with any of the larger sort of behind the scenes estimating, purchasing, business operations. I saw it again just by being involved, but I was on the crew. I was on the team. I was building houses. Yep.
And you did go to college and you studied engineering, is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid program. It's called Construction Engineering Technology, sort of between construction management and civil engineering. It's kind of a middle ground. Yeah.
And did you know you were you had the experience building custom homes with your uncle? I'm going to go and do that. I'm going to get this degree, and then I'm going to go into construction. What was the mindset there?
I always knew, I shouldn't say always, but from an early age, yes. In those teen years, I understood I was good at it, and I wanted to pursue it in some form or fashion. I think the college thing just seemed like the right path. At that point in our lives, it was sort of the thing that, your parents, yep, go to college, do the thing, get the paper, all that stuff. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, let's do this program that Bozeman offered. There was no other choice. I was going to MSU. I was going to do something there, and they just happened to have this program that fit me really well. Like it really was just circumstance. And I took this program, which is, like I say, I would say just an elevated construction management program. And the courses allow you to take the engineering exam. I mean, I wasn't in a civil engineering course, but I took the exam. Therefore, I came out with the certificate to practice under a civil engineer. So it just opened another doorway for me that I thought was interesting and fun.
Yeah. Looking back, do you think that your degree is required for you to be where you're at today?
Was my degree required to be where I'm at right now? Is that what?
Like, there's a lot of listeners out there that have not gotten a college degree, and Martin and I have talked about this. It's some head trash that they have, like, oh, I'm not qualified, and I'm gonna get caught. I'm gonna get found out because I don't really know what I'm doing, or I don't have that credential.
Right.
Do you feel like that's a real, can you dispel that, or no, you agree that they probably do need a degree?
I'm on both sides of that fence. I don't think you need it. What I found early on in my career is that from a very fundamental core internal level, getting a college degree taught me how to educate myself. And that is what I've applied throughout my career to get me to where I am today. So it basically taught me how to study things and how to learn in my own way. Because school itself wasn't, and fortunately, school for me was not difficult. I skied a bunch. I skipped a lot of class. I wasn't an A student. I was like, I need a C to get the paper, and that's the threshold, and that's it. That's it, and that's great. So I really enjoyed those years at college for that reason. And then the paper was just a plus. I didn't need it. I just wanted the experience. And I don't discredit anybody who doesn't have one, but I also believe that going through some sort of formal higher education really it teaches you how to learn. It teaches you how to consume things, interpret data, and understand things to get better at whatever it is you want to pursue. And that can be anything.
Yeah. Learning is definitely a
Alex,
skill.
Yeah, it is. And Alex, you've written about that. You've made that comment that college teaches you to study. It's brilliant. I think what you pick up in civil engineering, you may not need, but it certainly is information that's related to your field. But the only caveat I put on saying it as a broad statement is it gives you the opportunity to learn how to learn.
Sure.
But it doesnn't necessarily do that. And if you're on the picket lines or the old-fashioned way, drunk on the couch, now being replaced by political activism, then you might miss that. But it absolutely, I think it's really wise. It gives you the opportunity to learn how to learn, and kind of codifies it. So
for
good
sure.
point.
So we're going to end up getting to where you own Northbuilt Construction today, and you're growing that business. But Northbuilt, when does it really start as you starting to do your own projects without your uncle, just by yourself? When did that start after college? Or maybe it was during college?
I had always done what I would consider side projects throughout those college years, mostly for friends and family, and nothing too crazy. Smaller things, install a door, replace a window, install flooring in a basement, just small stuff. And then I founded Northbuilt in 2015, roughly a year after getting out of college. I worked for a civil engineering firm right out of college, and I realized very quickly that although it was interesting, it wasn't what I really wanted to do. At that point in my life, especially, I really enjoyed bags on, tool in hand, building something. I thought that was super rewarding, as a career path, as a field. That's one of the very few things where you go to work that day, and when you stand back at the end of the day, you can literally see your progress of what you've built. Unlike, maybe a document or a spreadsheet or whatever. Sure, you can see that, but it's not as tangible. It kind of just lives somewhere in the ether. This is very real. At the end of the day, you're like, man, that's super cool. We just put that together. So yeah, founded in 2015, shortly after college. And that's when I was working on my own. I hired some summer help to help do some stuff, and we were off.
And what type of projects at this point, when you've started in 2015, are you still just doing the window, or what does that look like?
No, actually, it was a really cool opportunity. A good friend of mine had done did very well for himself, and he asked me to build him a house. And so I came back and I built a house. So that was my first
Oh,
project
wow.
as
This was
Northbuilt.
in Montana.
Correct.
You're
Yes.
still in Montana at that
Yep.
point.
Yep.
Okay. And
Yep.
what size house is this?
It was fun too. It was a SIPS panel, so structurally insulated panel. So it's like a big foam block with 2 sheets of plywood on each side, and then you
Oh, yeah.
kind of stack it together like Legos. The walls and the roof. It was a kind of an open floor plan with a loft. Oh man, it's been a while now. Probably, I want to say it was like 40 by 40, somewhere in that size. 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, kind of a mudroom, laundry area, and a kitchen, and then a big loft upstairs. So we'll call that 1,500 square feet, I think, something like that.
Did you bid that on cost plus, or did you give him a price and have a margin in it and have to keep it, or did you just shake hands and not even talk about money? How'd that go?
Oh no,
You're smiling, so
I did the
there's a
best I
story.
could, and we'll just say politely that Wyatt got the best end of that deal. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I did not. I think when I look at think back on my contract, I think it was like 40,000, maybe 60, somewhere in there by the time it was all said and done. So it was. It took me about a year. Yeah, but it was a team effort. There was times where I needed him to help me, but for the most part, I built almost that whole house by myself. And I'd have him and his brother would help me occasionally, kind of putting things up or setting some of those panels. But yeah, for the most part, I would do as much as I could by myself, and then I would kind of stack 3 or 4 or 5 tasks where I'd like, hey, all right, I need you guys on Friday to help me do these things, and then boom, they'd show up, we'd knock them out, and then they'd go back to doing their thing, and then I could keep going. So it was a cool experience.
I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, I don't know if he got the better end of that deal. I think you being able to get that experience at such a young age by yourself is foundational to your learning. I would guarantee you probably learned more in that job than your entire college degree, and I think that that's not really the mentality of a lot of people out there, is to go and lose money or pay for the opportunity to go and learn hands-on experience like that. And I see college students trying to get an internship and they want $20 an hour and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you should be like paying for this opportunity to be an intern there. You should be going and trying to be an apprentice and get that hands-on experience for no pay. But anyways, I know that maybe wasn't the mentality in the moment. You were probably thinking, I'm going to make some money on this, and it didn't turn out that way. But even that's a lesson in of itself, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, to your point, I don't regret either side of that coin. I just look back and go, man, built that whole thing for that. And again, it was great. And it was a team effort. They helped a lot. So it was fine. And it was a fair shake on both sides. And it was fun. So I had a lot of fun.
Well, and this was just on the side. This wasn't your full-time thing. So tell us about, job out of college, why you decided to get a job and not go out on your own full-time. What was your thinking there?
And to clarify that, when I built that house, I was full-time for Northbuilt.
Okay.
Essentially I came out of college and I was like, all right, I passed this engineering test. Let's go check it out. I've never done this. Let's figure it out. My wife at the time was still finishing up college, so I didn't really want to leave Bozeman yet. So I got a job with a firm in Bozeman. And at the time they had a division out in North Dakota in the oil fields. And so what I would do is every 2 weeks, we'd hop on their plane and we'd fly back and forth from Bozeman to North Dakota. I'd hang out for 2 weeks, do what was required out there, and then I'd fly back. It ended up being probably 3 in 1. I'd go out for 3 and I'd come back for 1. And I did that for a while, realized that really wasn't a great fit. And then I hired on for a large commercial GC in Montana. And I was on with them at a really fun project in Yellowstone National Park over the winter. So we were kind of the only people in the park at the time. Was sort of the crew. We'd roll up on Monday morning early, and we had the code to the gate. And you'd open the gate, and you'd drive in, and then you'd close the gate, and you'd just take off through the park. That was a cool experience. And then while I was doing that, similar kind of story where I'd go down on Monday, I'd come back on Friday. So I was kind of gone a majority of the time. And then Emily came out of school and I had this opportunity and I went back, and then we went full time for Northbuilt. That was the first stretch there. But throughout my career, I've done that a lot. We'd kind of and so I ran Northbuilt full time for about 3 years in Montana. And then we decided to move to Colorado just for a new experience. Hadn't lived anywhere else. Both my wife and I went to school in Montana at Bozeman, grew up in Montana, and we're like, let's try something new. And then when we came into Colorado, picked up a W-2 to kind of get our footing, and did that for a few years before coming back to Northbuilt.
Okay. And so what were you doing in Colorado? What was your first job?
Yeah, I came on with FCI, FCI Contractors. They're an ENR top 500. I would say municipality contractor. They really focus on airport. They have projects at the airport, fitness centers, police stations, fire stations. A lot of municipality work. It's really what they focus on: schools, higher education, stuff like that. So really went from building my own stuff, being kind of boots on the ground, being the guy, to being part of this massive, just incredible organization, employee owned, like really, really incredible team. That really showed me like the longevity of culture. There were guys there that had been there their whole careers, and ended up retiring through FCI and had done very well for themselves. So that was fun. Learned a lot there, and then kind of got the itch again. I was there for about a year, and I'm like, man, I really kind of want to do this thing again. I ended up getting into, I left FCI and I got into a very bad partnership. And it wasn't even a partnership. It was more of like, I kind of got used a little bit. Older gentleman. I was sort of running the show, not making any money. And I finally kind of saw the light and got out of there. And it's
Can
just
you tell me why you got into that partnership in the first place?
Yeah.
What was the mindset and the decision process?
I think I was looking for somebody to like help me build something. I wasn't confident in my own abilities, especially in a new city, new state, new place, new regulations or different building standards, if you will. And I was kind of like, gosh, I would really love to team up with somebody. I think if somebody can help me do some of the business stuff, I can do the builder stuff. Like, I was like, that's what I was really looking for. I'm like, that'd be awesome. And I just sort of bought into that mentality, and I found this guy, and I found him on Craigslist. In the beginning, it worked out fairly well. And then it just turned south, and my eyes were opened after a few comments that he had made, and it kind of forced my hand.
I think it's important. You've said it, but I want to just put a little highlighter on it. The difference between what you thought about being in a partnership and what you think about it now, because we've talked about this, so right. I know a little more about what you think and why, which you explained, I think, why you were open to a partnership before versus why you're not now. So, I mean, those are really important to listeners, especially people that are starting out a little bit scared, think they need help, think they need advice, think they need money, think they need whatever it is. Okay. Anyway, if you can just expand on it a little bit, it's a really important point, I think.
Of like what I thought of a partnership then versus what I think now?
Yes.
No.
And why?
Sure. Yeah, I think at the time, I thought a partnership was going to be the answer to success, right? To your point, I thought that was like, okay, two people come together, meeting the minds, it's going to be great. I'm going to contribute, full amount. They're going to contribute full amount, and we're going to do something great together. And that was like kind of what I would consider shoring up a weakness or a perceived weakness I had of lack of business fundamentals, maybe, or lack of business experience. And that's what I thought I had found. This guy kind of promoted himself as a business guy. He was into marketing and sales, and he really talked the talk. And after going through that experience, it really hardened me in a sense of like, I really kind of doubled down on sort of the kind of the FU mentality of like, I don't need anybody. And after that, I was like, if I can't do it myself, then I'm going to go be, and this is my fundamental belief, that if I can't do this myself, and build a team, it's not all me, but grow this thing from the top, then I'm going to go be a fantastic number two that I looked for in the beginning for somebody who has that capability as well. And I'll just be an incredible number two. So.
Mm. So I think really what you were looking for was validation in your partnership, not just, you didn't feel like you could do it yourself. And so if I have this other guy, then we can make it work. And it's validating to me. And then you realize that you actually didn't need validation from anyone else. Yes, you need guidance. Yes, you need support. You can't do it alone, but you can be the sole owner. You can be the visionary. You can be the operator that puts everything into place. And I think that's
This,
the lesson that most people need to learn, is that they don't need validation through a partnership. They may need validation through, hey, I got a customer. That's validation. Hey, I made profit on this job. That's validation. I accomplished this milestone. That's validation. But it doesn't come in the form of, oh, I get validation through this partnership.
yeah, I think this is kind of a big question I'll be asking you that'll filter through the rest of what we say here. But so, how did you do it then? Right? When you went on your own, you were a good builder operation guys, and you had all these other things that we talk about all the time on this podcast, about market, getting your customers and being leadership and administrative duties. So how did you do it?
I I went back to the books. I started studying the things I didn't know. I hired a coach. I talked to other builders. I went through podcasts like crazy. I just found the resources to shore up what I perceived as my weaknesses, to get better. Like, that's truly what I did. From a fundamental level, I just went out and said, all right, this didn't work. Why? And then how can I prevent that in the future? And it's like, all right, I have to learn what I don't know. I have to figure out the things I don't know and become better at those things. And I think that gave me the confidence to then pursue this further.
Martin and I have both gotten the opportunity to work with you over the last year or so. And I think one defining characteristic that I would say that you exhibit is that you're entrenched. Can you walk us through what like a typical day, a typical week looks like for you in your business? And not just the 9 to 5, but what is the time and the energy and the resources that you're putting into yourself, into your job, your business look like?
Yeah. And that's a little bit challenging to answer, especially in this period for me, Khalil, just because we've seen such substantial growth, right? So what I would consider my day to day or my week to week a month ago is pretty different, this month.
Well, not in terms of necessarily what you're working on, but just even what your schedule is. Like,
Sure.
you don't have to tell me exactly what you're working on, but how much are you working in and on the business? What does that schedule look like?
Yeah. And even there, I think what I said still applies. I would say right now,
Okay.
just from a general oversense, I am doing 80% of my work is now on the business and 20% is in the business, from like two general buckets that are terms that hopefully listeners can kind of understand. Is at the beginning of the year, I was probably the flop of that. 20% was on the business and 80% was in the business, marketing, sales activities, project management. And we've brought on team members now to help take those things kind of out of my bucket and into their bucket. And now I would say 80% of my time is working on the business in things that are training and development for the new team members and future team members that are coming on board, building out SOPs, videos and structures to what we've got, and further kind of developing myself along the way, with other sort of knowledge acquiring activities.
Alex,
Yeah.
what were some key steps that you took that enabled that? Because I've witnessed it. You went from you're the guy to you're not even in the same room with people anymore. But what made that possible? And just in general, so people can say, man, I need to do that. What kind of systems, processes, activities, mindset, acquisition of people, what made it possible?
I think it's first mindset, right? And we've kind of been touching on that with a few of these backstories, but it's like believing that I could do it and then finding resources, such as yourself, a coach to help me implement what's most important. So I'd say it's mindset, and then it's prioritizing what's important, and then it was taking action, and that action was building out kind of fundamental and foundational aspects of our business. CRM, we utilize HubSpot, but getting a CRM to track our sales information, really get some key data back there. We've utilized Builder-Trend. That was our first software as a project management tool to really organize and consolidate all of our job, files, schedules, estimating, anything related to job documents goes in there. And then lastly, kind of sort of internal team communication and document control with we use G Suite. So our internal sort of communication, file storage, data collection through G Suite. So I think those have been, instrumental in the growth that we've seen this year and kind of getting us from A to B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I was trying to hit at is that you're working 7 days a week and you're up late at night brainstorming documents and getting on a whiteboard. You're constantly listening to podcasts, trying to connect with people. You're looking to network with people in your area that are 10 times your size. And that, while yes, there's a difference in working in, working on, you're entrenched. Like this isn't just something that, yes, you've replaced your 9 to 5 from a W-2 to owning your own business. This is, hey, my life right now is, yes, I have a family, I'm married, got a kid, but I am 100% in on Northbuilt, and I'm giving every ounce of my attention to this business to get it to a place where I can step out, and I can replace myself. And I would say that's a defining characteristic that has allowed you to have the right mindset, allowed you to prioritize, and allowed you to take action on the things that matter, is that you're not just giving 8 hours a day to it, because that's not possible to get to that point, in my opinion, with as quickly as you have. It takes that entrenchment in the business that you have. And it's really inspiring to see. And I think a lot of people need to hear that, because they go to work every day and they put maybe even 10 hours a day in the business, and they're not getting to where you are, of replacing themselves, of implementing their tech stack, of getting organized, of, finding the right people to fill holes in their business. And it's because they're not as entrenched, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I maybe misunderstood what you meant by that, but yeah, in my word, I would call it committed. And if you're listening to this, I think you have to determine what you're committed to. Everyone always says the gurus and all that, figure out your why. I'll be honest. I've tried to do that. I don't really know it, but what I do know is I really like this, and I really want to try to build a big business that provides for a lot of families, a lot of team members, and does something really great for clients and customers, across Colorado and hopefully beyond there at some point. So I think that's what it really comes down to, is figuring out what you want. And then if that's what you want, then go for that. And maybe that's take every Friday off. And that's fantastic. If you can do that and that's what you want, then you've done it and you've made it. And that's a success in my book. And for me, to your point, Khalil, it's I'm just really committed to seeing how big we can get and how many customers we can serve and how we can change. I would say I really want to change the narrative of what it means to be a contractor. I think for years that's been, we can make jokes of the plumber's crack or the, the contractor who steals money or any of that, which is still rampant in the industry today. I mean, it is a low barrier to entry. You can throw tools in the back of a car and be like, I'm a contractor. And that's great. There are great guys who I started like that. Some of the best ones started like that. But how do we get rid of the riffraff and sort of this, this idea that, oh yeah, you can just take a bunch of money up front and then don't go do the project. That to me is just absurd. It just shouldn't be allowed. So yeah, I think you got to be committed and you got to know what you're going for.
Yeah, we got a couple that we'll hit on here in a minute. I do want to finish that thought on being committed, because I think before you fully went on your own, you had trouble in your W-2, that you were fully committed, but that's not really what they were looking for. Can you share a little bit of that story? And
that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah. How you switched gears there?
Yeah. I was on board with the large global construction consulting firm. We'll leave it at that. Great organization, employee owned, like so many wonderful perks, great team, sharp minds. I mean, really cream of the crop, like really fun people to work with. Um, and I just have so much to give that when I'm in and ready, and I want more, and I want more on my plate, and I want to be involved. And I want to see how we can, grow faster, be better, do better all the time. And it got to a point where, I was completing all my tasks and my duties, and it wasn't very challenging. And so I was looking for more. And I was kind of teetering back and forth of like, am I going to stay? Am I going to go? Where am I at? It wasn't a real clear cut, like, this isn't for me anymore. Like my previous roles, I've kind of just been like, yeah, it's ready to move on. And it's been pretty easy for me to make those decisions. This one I was really kind of on the fence, and I sort of walked into my manager's office, and we had a one-on-one, and I told her, I was like, you're only getting 30% of me. Like truly, that's what you're getting from me right now. I would really love to be, to give more. Like, where can I help? What can we do? Like, I want more. And I kind of wanted to move over into like a sales role where I could hunt a little more, instead of being sort of a consulting technician. And that just wasn't getting any traction. I really wasn't falling on deaf ears. And this is sort of my last throw. And she didn't really say anything. She just really didn't even respond to that. And that was the tell for me. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't the spot for me anymore.
Yeah. And you have a great line that I loved hearing from you, is that, they seemed pleased with 30% of my effort. So I decided to give 100% to myself.
Exactly.
And I just think that's such a great mindset of, if you can give more, why not give it to yourself rather than just give it to someone who doesn't even appreciate it? So really cool. So going back to your changing the narrative about contractors, I think a big thing that I think anybody out there will say about contractors is they suck at communication. And I'm sure you've had your spells with that, but something that you've implemented with your team now is to really communicate with your clients. Tell us about what you do with clients weekly, and how you dispel that myth and change the narrative of what it means to be a contractor.
Yeah, we boil it down to sort of one key objective, and that is gaining and maintaining trust. And from a fundamental level, I think most of us can agree, to do that, you have to say what you're going to do the thing you're going to do, and then follow up with the thing you did. Right? Like from a very fundamental core level, that's kind of how I approach it, and that's how we approach it, at Northbuilt. And so with that, one thing we've implemented recently has been our weekly updates. And so on Wednesdays, we have a production meeting, and we will go through all the projects that we have. And then we put together it's like a 5-topic email send out draft that our admin will kind of follow along in the meeting, and she'll type together what those 5 areas are for each project. And then on Friday mornings, pretty much like clockwork, 8:00, those go out. And that is a key driver of communication for us and maintaining that trust.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, even if there's not really much to update on, you're giving an update. And I think that brings a lot of peace of mind to the customer, knowing that, hey, every week I can count on this. So much of working with customers and gaining trust is setting expectations and then maintaining those expectations or meeting them. And by setting the expectation, hey, you're going to hear from us every week, and then meeting it every week, you're just instilling that trust and reaffirming that trust that they can work with you and find success.
There's something in the Friday report too. I don't know if you want to list all the things, but what we did last week, what we're going to do next. But there's a place in there, where are we on the schedule? And it might be we're 4 days behind, and it says it right there.
Yep.
Just tell them good news, and they may get mad, but they're not really going to be as mad as if you just didn't show up and they didn't know where you were. I think it's brilliant. And just so we can kind of cover this before we have to go, there's this area, and I think it dovetails perfectly. I know there are people listening, okay, I got my business going, but how do you go out there and get his customers, right? How did you market? How did you start? Because you really have exploded this year in terms of sales. Can you part of it is, can you tell, what's your approach to getting customers? I know part of it's accountability, and how did you wind up doing it? Because you do very well on the sales.
Yeah. And one thing I want to make clear is we're not perfect. And there are plenty of weeks where we type up that report and we go, oh man, this one kind of stinks, but we're true to our word. We got to send it out with like, we didn't hit milestones, and that can be tough. But I think it's really telling of like,
It's
that's the
accountability,
culture.
man. It's
Yep,
perfect.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then flip into the sales side, I'm still really working on marketing efforts and like trying to be better on that front. But what I think we've done a really good job of from the beginning of this year is making connections with other people in our industry who can potentially bring us prospects, jobs, leads that turn into work for us. So from a fundamental level, I'm really big on fostering relationships and cultivating those throughout, days, weeks, months, and just really staying in touch with great people in the industry. I heard something the other day that really rang true for me. There's no downside to more good people knowing who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's your network is your net worth, right? So if you can just be connected and you can bring value to people in your network, even if they're not exactly your customers, whenever, they're thinking of, man, should I remodel my bathroom? Should I remodel my kitchen? Who should I call? Oh, I know someone. And then, they're able to refer you. They're able to keep you connected. I love that.
yeah.
I think
And even
another
on a,
big part. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, even on like a kind of a higher level than that, and Martin and I have talked about this before. I call them, so for me, like a sales activity, I can make a call, land a sale. I call that chopping down one tree. I go into the forest, I chop a tree down, I bring it back, and the team, cuts it up into tiny logs, and that's profit, whatever. I look for lumberjacks. So what I consider a lumberjack is somebody who could go out into the forest for me and cut down 3 or 4 trees a year and bring them back to the team. And so what we consider a lumberjack is going to be designers. Those are great referral sources. We have a couple designers that bring us 2 or 3 projects every year. And so I'm like, okay, great. If we can find one more designer, that could potentially be 3 to 5 projects. So we kind of exponentially magnify what we're bringing in by going after those sources first. So designers, design professionals, architects, and then another key aspect that we've approached is larger builders. Some bigger custom home builders, they're not taking on the size of projects that we specialize in. And so they're really looking for a qualified, accountable contractor that's going to take care of their client. Like that's huge because that's their reputation on the line too, as a referral source. So sorry to interrupt, Khalil, but that was
Absolutely.
just a key point I think
good.
has been very helpful for us.
Well, I think another aspect of this is that you're also not trying to be all things to all people. By you specializing in high-end bathroom remodels and kitchen remodels, you've got a narrow focus to where you can be known for something, where you can be an expert at it, but also you're meeting a specific need. So when people have that specific need, you're the person that comes to mind. It's not just, hey, I'm a remodeler. It's like, no, we focus on this. And so then it's much easier for you to create content. It's much easier for you to run ads. It's much easier for you to reach out to designers with a specific ask. And I just think that's a huge part of it that you can't leave out, where if you're trying to be all things to all people, it's going to be a lot harder to stand out and to stick in their mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's share a little bit about kind of what the challenges are right now. You've gotten to a decent spot. Let's share where you're at with team members. Anything else you want to share about current status of the business and kind of where you see things going and kind of roadblocks that you have right now?
Yeah. I feel like the roadblocks change frequently. The biggest thing for us right now is kind of cohesiveness across the team and throughout the process. We've brought on a lot of new team members. At the beginning of the year, there was 1 and it was me. And now we have 7. And so what I've been really focused on is, hashing out high level roadmaps of like, hey guys, this is where we're going. And this is how your role specifically contributes to getting us there. And then even further diving into like detailed training, standard operating procedures and things like that to help guide the team in the right direction so that they can do their role to the best of their ability. Aside from that, I think the biggest hurdle that I see right now is it can be a little bit of like this, almost like this lack of confidence sometimes across the team, where I know what we're capable of, but new team members haven't always, they can't see it yet. So it's a little bit tough for them to be like, to sell with conviction, or to really be like, yes, we're the great team that we know we are. So instilling confidence has been something I've been working on a lot lately. And then from a fundamental level, it's just really driving revenue. I think everything starts in the front end, and we have a good enough team that it'll all kind of shake out as we get through it and get more at bats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that didn't really pinpoint any specific challenges, I guess.
No, it's all right.
We talk enough. I don't know. Is there anything you guys noticed that we've been struggling with lately? Because I can certainly elaborate. I mean, again, we talk with you quite a bit. So,
well, like we had that episode of Mike Kelly, and when he grew really fast as well. Different, type of. For you, growth can be just a handful of projects. For him, growth was like hundreds of projects each week in terms of HVAC and refrigeration. And there's challenges with both. I think for him, capital was just a huge one. How are you approaching that challenge in terms of getting cash, relationship with banks, whatever it is?
that's a great point, Khalil. Banks don't like to lend to small businesses. It's really challenging. Yeah. And that's a blanket statement, but in my experience, it's really tough. You have to have a 3-year track record. They want to see all this stuff. And then even then, sometimes they're like, well, we're just not sure yet. So we've established a new relationship with a bank here in town that is going really well, but it just takes time. One thing that I've done, we don't hold any debt. We don't hold any debt. So I think the next step for us is we're going to probably take out a little bit of credit to really move the needle on the front end on marketing and sales, and really boost our swings at bat, or our at bats.
I've got to jump in here and say this because Alex has probably the finest set of books of any contractor I've worked with. The thing that makes him so good is that you have work in process. We don't have to talk about it all the time. But if you don't have that and you're a contractor and there's any time involved and you get deposits and you pay money to subs, you really don't know where you are until you even all that out. Alex has the ability to do that. And it's really good. Now, why is that important? Number one, you do know if you're making a profit. Number two, you can have a booked 45% margin, but in reality, when all the bills come in and all the checks, the overruns come in, you have a 19% margin. You must know that, right? And the next thing is, we haven't really talked about this much, but when you have good books, it makes it possible to know what your working capital requirements are. And you do take deposits, which handles a lot of that. If you didn't have deposits, you'd need that credit line a year ago. But so when you look forward and you go to a bank and you show them that I have work in process, good books, I'm consistently profitable, I know what my margins are, I know what a margin is, and here are my working capital requirements, and here's how I figured them. The odds of that bank giving you a loan go up. Not as much as if you give them 160 acres of land as collateral, but
yeah.
I have to tell this. I ask almost every banker I've ever met, I said, what characteristics inspire you the most when it comes to making a lending? I've never had a banker say anything first other than character. Okay. Profitability, cash flow, and collateral. And I say they all say character, but it's collateral.
Yes. Agreed.
And cash flow. I mean, anyway, I love bankers, or at least a lot of bankers.
Yeah. So, and I think one key thing to highlight in that, Mark, right, is we do have a great set of books, thanks to both of you for helping with that. And I gave that. So this new relationship at this bank, I gave them all of that. And the amount of credit card, the line on the credit cards they gave us was $3,200. And I mean, that's just not enough. And I told him, I was just like, we got to do better than that, and it took a long time. And now we're at 15. So again, still not enough.
Well, they also have to show good results. You can accurately report bad results, which you're not doing, but And then also there's a level of banks. There are levels of bankers. And if you're working with,
Yeah.
some guys who anyway, but yeah, no, keep the good books, man. It will absolutely grease the rails when you're, as you keep going. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the hour mark here. So if we have to, you're at a really cool place in your business. You've grown to a really cool spot, and we're going to have you on in a year, because I'm sure you're going to blow through where you are right now, and we'll get an update. But if you had to give any advice to the contractor out there that is solo, that is where you were in January, and doing basically everything by himself with maybe one right-hand person and some subs, what's that advice for that contractor?
Yeah. I think first, and I touched on this a while ago, is you got to understand what you want and where you want to go. Once you know that, then I advise like really studying what people who are there, what do they do? If you're a $1 million company and you want to get to 10, what does a $10 million business owner do? Like, figure out who those people are in your local community or your city, your area, and reach out to them. You'd be surprised how many people I reach out to, especially in the beginning, where I'm like, man, I'm kind of nervous. Like, I don't know what they're going to say. Like, well, who cares? Like literally the worst case scenario is they don't answer you. Or maybe the worst case scenario is they tell you to mess off, like, see you later. It's like, okay, well, that kind of hurt, but that's not so bad. Like, not a big deal. And then if you do that enough times, you're bound to get a yes. Like, oh, I'd love, yeah, come on over, check out the shop, see what we do here. Let's talk shop. That'd be great. Actually, I'm thinking about retiring in a few years. Would you be interested about taking over some business from us? Like, you just never know where that's going to lead to. So I think it's building and fostering relationships with people who have done what you want to do, because for the most part, in I would say almost in any business other than maybe Elon Musk, right? Who's doing things that nobody has done before. Most of the stuff in business has been done before. Most ideas are not new. They're just regurgitated in a different format for a different generation. At 50 years ago, there was not podcasts. Now there is. So it's just as simple as that. And I think in my mind, that's been the biggest factor for me, is figuring out where I want to go, finding the people who have been there or who can help me get there, and just having those conversations and being very open and candid about where I'm at right now, so that I can have them help me the best of their abilities.
I love that. Got to be a learner, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Alex, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more? I know you're all about networking.
Yeah, I am. I would say Instagram, whether it's Northbuilt or me personally, Alex Weeks. Follow me on Instagram. I'm going to start putting a lot more content on there. Follow along with what I've got going on, what we've got going on. Reach out. And I like to have conversations, as I've said, with other business owners, especially in the trades. So if you're listening to this and you want to talk shop, send me an email, alex@northbuiltconstruction.com, and let's have a conversation.
Love it. We'll put links to your Instagram handles and to your email in the show notes for listeners. Thank you again for being on. It's always inspiring getting to talk to you. And we'll see you around.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for tuning in to The Cash Flow Contractor. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Visit thecashflowcontractor.com. See you next episode.